They say Genghis Khan feared no man, not kings, not armies, not death. But one night, deep in the mountains, the most feared conqueror in history woke up screaming that something outside his tent was whispering his name. Not Khan, not great ruler. His real childhood name, Temujin. The wind moved across the Mongolian steppe like a living thing. It hissed between the tents. It rattled the horse bones hanging from the shaman's poles. It bent the fire sideways until the flames looked like fingers reaching into the dark. Genghis Khan's army had camped beneath a black mountain, far from any village, far from any road, far from anything that should have been alive. They were returning from a campaign in the west, victorious, as always. Cities had fallen, kings had begged, armies had been swallowed like dust. The men joked around their fires that even the spirits had learned to fear the Mongols, but the horses did not agree. All night they refused to sleep. They pulled at their ropes. They snorted into the darkness. Some stared toward the mountain and would not look away. Then just before midnight, one horse screamed. Not neighed, screamed. The camp went silent. A guard grabbed his spear and ran toward the sound. 3 others followed him. They reached the edge of the camp and found the horse lying on its side, still tied to the post. Its eyes were open, its mouth was frozen wide, but there was no blood, no wound, no tracks in the snow. Only one thing was strange. The horse's mane had been braided tightly, carefully, like a child had done it. One of the guards stepped back. "There are no children here," he whispered. Behind them, from the dark slope of the mountain, a voice answered, "There is one." The guard spun around. Nothing, and only black trees, snow, rock. Then the voice came again, soft, dry, too close. "Temujin." The men froze, and no one called the Khan that. Not anymore. That was the name from before the empire, before the blood, before the world learned to kneel. The guards ran back to camp. By morning, 3 of them were dead. They had not been stabbed. They had not been poisoned. They had simply lain down in their tents and never woken up. But each man had the same thing on his chest, a small braid of black horsehair. Genghis Khan ordered the bodies burned before sunrise. No mourning, no discussion. Fear was a sickness, and he would not let it spread through his army. He summoned his shaman, an old man named Chu, whose face was lined like cracked earth. "What is on that mountain?" the Khan asked. The shaman looked up toward the peak, and his eyes narrowed. "That is not a mountain for men." Genghis Khan's expression did not change. "I have crossed deserts, rivers, kingdoms. I have killed men who called themselves gods." The shaman lowered his voice. "This is older than gods." The Khan stepped closer. "What is it?" The shaman hesitated. Then he said, "A debt." For the first time, the men inside the tent looked at each other. The shaman continued. "When you were a boy, Temujin, your father was poisoned. Your family was abandoned. You starved. You froze. You killed your own half-brother over food." The Khan's jaw tightened. Everyone knew the stories, but no one spoke them in front of him. The shaman pointed toward the mountain. "You survived by killing, by becoming harder than the world. But every life leaves a mark. Every death remembers the hand that caused it." Genghis Khan smiled coldly. "Then let them remember. I built an empire from memory." The shaman leaned forward. "No. You built an empire from bones." That should have killed him. Any other man would have lost his tongue for speaking that way. But Genghis Khan only stared. Then he gave the order, "At dawn we climb." The next morning he took 12 men, his strongest, his quietest, men who had walked through burning cities without blinking. They climbed toward the black mountain while the army watched from below. The higher they went, the quieter the world became. No birds, no wind, no cracking ice. Even their footsteps sounded wrong, as if the mountain was swallowing each sound before it could escape. Halfway up, they found the first body. It was sitting against a tree, a Mongol scout, missing for 3 days. His face was pale, his lips were blue, but his eyes had been removed. In their place were 2 small stones. One of the warriors made a sign against evil. Genghis Khan grabbed him by the throat. "Do that again, and I'll throw you down the mountain." The man lowered his hand. They continued. Then another warrior stopped. "Khan, Ahead of them was a clearing. In the middle stood a tent, a Mongol tent, old, torn, half buried in snow, but smoke rose from the top. Someone was inside. Genghis Khan drew his sword, and the men surrounded the tent. From within came the sound of humming, a woman's voice, soft and familiar. The Khan stepped inside. The fire burned low. The air smelled of milk, smoke, and old blood. And sitting beside the fire was his mother. Holon, but that was impossible. His mother was far away, older now, alive. This woman looked exactly as she had when he was a child. Her hair was dark, her face young, her hands thin from hunger. She did not look up. "You came back late," she said. Genghis Khan did not move. Outside, his men waited, hearing nothing. Inside, the woman stirred the fire. "Your brothers are hungry." The Khan's grip tightened on his sword. "You are not my mother." She smiled. "No, but you remember me as her." Then she looked up. Her eyes were empty black. "The dead cannot show you anything you do not already carry." Genghis Khan raised his sword, and the woman whispered, "You killed him for a fish." The tent vanished, the fire vanished, the woman vanished, and suddenly Genghis Khan was standing in the snow, alone, sword raised at nothing. His men stared at him. One of them whispered, "Who were you speaking to?" The Khan turned, but before he could answer, a scream echoed from the trees. One of the 12 men was gone. They found him hanging upside down from a branch. His armor was still on, his sword still in its sheath. His face was twisted in terror. Carved into the bark beside him was one word, Temujin. This time, even Genghis Khan's men stepped back. The Khan ordered them forward. No one moved. He turned slowly, and in that moment, they saw something they had never seen before. Not fear, but uncertainty. The mountain was not fighting them like an enemy. It was remembering him. Every step higher brought something from his past, a frozen river where he had once hidden from enemies, the sound of a child crying in the dark, the smell of boiled leather when his family had nothing left to eat. Then they heard hoofbeats, fast, coming from above. Impossible on that slope. Out of the mist rode a black horse. No rider. Its mane was braided. It stopped in front of the Khan. Hanging from its saddle was a human skull, a child's skull. The shaman who had followed at a distance fell to his knees. "Do not touch it." Genghis Khan walked forward. The horse lowered its head, and from inside the skull came a whisper, "Brother." For a moment the Khan's face changed. His half-brother, Bekter, the boy he had killed, the first life he had taken with his own hands, the one death that came before all the others. The skull whispered again, "You fed the world to the grave after me?" Genghis Khan said nothing. Then the skull began to laugh, not loudly, worse, like a child trying not to wake his mother. One by one, the Mongol warriors backed away. The Khan lifted his sword and struck the skull from the saddle. It shattered on the rocks. The laughter stopped, and the black horse turned and galloped into the mist. Then the mountain answered. Thousands of whispers rose from the snow. Men, women, children, languages from every land he had conquered, all speaking at once, all saying the same thing. Pay. The ground cracked, and a wind burst from the mountain so cold that the men fell to their knees. The shaman screamed, "Great Khan, leave now!" But Genghis Khan did not run. He walked into the storm. His cloak whipped behind him, and his sword shook in his hand. And through the white darkness he saw a figure standing at the summit, a boy, thin, hungry, barefoot in the snow. Temujin, not the conqueror, not the Khan, the child. The boy stared at him and said, "You became strong enough that no one could hurt you." Genghis Khan stepped closer. The boy tilted his head. "So why are you still afraid?" The Khan stopped. The whispers faded. For the first time in years, the great conqueror had no answer. Then the boy smiled. Behind him, the snow moved. Thousands of pale faces pressing upward beneath the ice. Every person whose death had built his empire. Their mouths opened, and together they whispered, "Not yet." The Khan blinked, and the boy was gone. The mountain was silent. Genghis Khan returned to camp alone. Of the 12 men who climbed with him, only 3 came back. None of them ever spoke again. That night, the Khan ordered the army to leave before dawn, and no one questioned him. But as his tent was packed, the shaman found something beneath his sleeping furs, a braid of black horsehair, tied around a small bone. The shaman burned it immediately, but the smell would not leave the tent. For the rest of his life, Genghis Khan never camped near that mountain again. Official histories say he died years later after falling from a horse. Others say illness took him. Some say he was killed in secret. But there is another story. A story whispered by old Mongol herders when the wind moves strangely at night. They say that on the night Genghis Khan died, every horse in his camp woke at once and stared toward the west. Then from far away came the sound of a child laughing. And beside the Khan's body, clenched in his dead hand, they found a single braid of black horsehair. No wound, no blood, no enemy. Just one final message from the mountain. The world may forget. The dead do not.